Welcome to the group exhibit Hydrogen, Fuel Cells and Batteries at the Hanover Fair 2017. We are here at the Technical Forum and my name is Muriel Burkas. I would like to also welcome our guests watching the live stream online today. The upcoming presentation will be regarding hydrogen and the transport sector, future options for e-mobility in Germany. I'm very much looking forward to this presentation and I'm curious what we're going to get to know. Please welcome with me on stage Board of Directors of Hydrogen Power Storage and Solutions East Germany, Dr. Kathrin Goldammer.
Yes, thank you, Muriel. Hello, everyone. My name is Kathrin Goldammer. I represent two organizations today. One is HiPause, which is a network of industry organizations and researchers in the field of hydrogen power and storage. And the other one is the Reiner Lemoine Institute. It is a research institute, and I'm the director of the institute. And I'd like to talk about hydrogen and its role in the transport sector. And since we work essentially on the German energy system, will be my focus today. And you need to know that I'm an electrical engineer, so when I talk about hydrogen, I know nothing about chemistry, but to me it's a product that you can produce out of electricity, all right? This is my view on hydrogen. If you would like to know more about HiPause, you're very welcome to visit us at the stand, which is here at this exhibit. HiPause is a network which is interested in getting to know all of you too. Some of you who are here are also members of HiPause. We're interested in producing green hydrogen and making it economical. That's the mission that we work on. And we do this in a network which focuses by its name on Eastern Germany, but it's not limited to that area. Eastern Germany, though, is very interesting to the field because we run a hydrogen pipeline. One of the two only hydrogen pipelines in Germany are situated there. And also because renewable energy penetration is a very big issue, especially in Eastern Germany, which is a rather rural area with a high penetration of wind and solar PV. So this is a map of Germany and to give you an idea of the industry sector in Eastern Germany that we work with. So why do I talk about mobility? Well, as a research institute that mostly works on the energy transition, it has become clear to us during the last few years that we need to look into mobility more than the electricity sector. The electricity sector is already undergoing a massive transformation, but the mobility sector, at least in Germany, is not. When you look at greenhouse gas emissions, but also particle emissions, it becomes clear that individual mobility and transport sector in general need to change. And a few questions that I'd like to raise in my talk is, what are the options that are on the table right now? How does hydrogen come in? And how does that affect the energy system in Germany, which at the same time is going through a massive transformation because of the high share of renewables that we are putting up in Germany. The transport sector is, when it comes to greenhouse gas emissions, extremely slow in transforming itself. It is also extremely significant for the overall carbon emissions in Germany. What's on the table right now in Germany is usually a look at battery electric vehicles because they run as zero-emission transport vehicles, and they can be plugged into the grid that we already have and which is already turning itself green. But there's also the option of producing green hydrogen from that electricity and putting it into a car. And this is basically the look that I'd like to adopt. So there is an electricity grid, which essentially in the future in Germany is going to be fueled by green or renewable energy. And we can either use that energy directly in a battery electric vehicle car, or we can produce green hydrogen from it and use that in a fuel cell car. We could also, if we want to, produce methane from it, use that in a combustion engine car, the ones that we've already been using. But it's something that is not being discussed so much right now. I think it is going to be discussed in the future when it comes to freight and long-haul transport. But I'm looking at individual mobility right now, where we have those two options. And as you can easily see, well, the way to the battery electric vehicle is very, very short. meaning essentially that it's also rather efficient. It's one of the big obstacles the hydrogen and fuel cell world needs to overcome to see this battle between these two technologies not come into a battle, but see whether maybe they can even be complementing each other. Because if you want to produce hydrogen also from that electricity, there is another conversion step which is going to reduce efficiency. And that's the discussion that we usually have to face when we look into hydrogen in mobility. But I'd like to show you today how there are many other effects also when you look at these two different transport options. And I'd like to show you what we find out when we run our energy simulation models. The Reiner Lemoine Institute is an engineering lab. Everyone here is either an electrical engineer, mechanical, or otherwise. And we have set up a number of computer simulations for the whole German electricity system, integrating a renewable energy system and the grids, and then either using that electricity to fuel a mobility comparable to that one today, or turn it into hydrogen, set up hydrogen storage, and use that for mobility. And I'd like to show you some of the results that emerge when you look at these two different options. I'd also like to point out that this is an ongoing research, and we're going to publish a paper in May, which is going to show you more details concerning this model, which is an open source model that you're free to look into if you're interested in the way that the source code works and the way that the assumptions work. And we're going to publish this at a conference in May, including all the presumptions that we've put into the model. As you can imagine, when you put in a cost number for, say, how much does the investment into an electrolyzer cost, or how much does the investment into a chemical electricity storage cost, this is going to greatly influence your outcomes. So we'd like to make everything transparent so that you can come up with your own conclusions about the research that we do. So this is a map of Germany, and we're looking into a future now where electricity production is 100% renewable. That is very close to the goals that the German government has really set up for Germany in 2050. And also, we're looking at a world where individual mobility, and I'm talking about individual mobility only, not freight or trains or otherwise, are run by 100% battery electric vehicles. And I'd like to compare this with a future where we're looking into either 100% fuel cells, or we're looking into a mix of the two. And one thing that has to become clear very, very early on is that obviously we're going to increase electricity demand greatly when we electrify the transport sector. This makes sense, right? Because I just said that it is a significant share of the energy portfolio in Germany. So obviously, if we electrify that, we are going to increase the overall electricity consumption in Germany. So we do need to think about the additional renewable energies we need to set up in this scenario. And we have calculated an additional renewable energy capacity that we need to produce. At the map, you can see that we also make an estimation for the number of charging stations, depending on the social structure of the area. Do people live in cities? Do they live in rural areas? Do they have access to their own charging at home? This is a scenario in which we're considering a future where 100% of cars, and we're actually using the same number of cars today in Germany, which is 45 million, is 100% based on fuel cells. It might seem extremely off right now, but I'd like to show you what that does to the energy system. So what it does to the energy system is that obviously, because of the lower conversion rates from electricity into hydrogen and then into the driven kilometer in the car, we need to add more renewable energy capacity to the system. That is true. But one other thing that changes is, interestingly, that we don't need to put up as much power storage as we used to in this other scenario. And power storage, when you want to store electrical power, is extremely costly and is extremely inefficient if you don't use it for instance, in the next scenario that I'm going to show you. So an overall scenario that I find highly attractive is the following. It is a mix of the two technologies, say, living side by side, as today you have gas and diesel, which both do not infer with each other. And here we have a mix of both hydrogen or fuel cell cars and battery electric vehicles. What happens is that it's true that there is still an increase in electricity production that we need, which makes sense, right? Because we're still electrifying the transport sector. But it also means that what we have now as losses and surpluses, and which is going to increase when you increase the renewable energy share, is going to be lower than in any other scenario. So basically, hydrogen being extremely flexible in this energy system will be a great asset to the system, which will in the future run on fluctuating renewable energies. So if you adopt this systemic view, there are many good reasons to look into a mix of both technologies in the future. As a conclusion, I'd like to argue that individual mobility is indeed at a turning point, and from the discussion that I see, especially the public discussion in Germany right now, I don't see one technology emerging as the single one. It'd be extremely interesting for me as a scientist, but also for the German industry to see both technologies evolving. And if they do, the introduction of hydrogen and fuel cells will mean that there is a great degree of temporal flexibility that those technologies will introduce into the energy system. For instance, when there is a high residual load, electrolyzers can take that out of the system and otherwise. And it affects the power system greatly. And you need to know that we're investing in the billions into the German electricity system still. And while we're doing that, I'd like to know what are the visions that we have for the transport sector, because that is going to introduce a lot of changes into the energy system too. This can be affecting the grid, but it can also be affecting the renewable energy capacities that we're building up. And this is why I'd like to be able to look more closely into the coupling effects of mobility and the future of the energy system in Germany. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this very interesting presentation. Are there any questions from the audience? If not, I would like to know, you are also, the topic is very important at the moment. How is Germany or the automotive industry reacting to this? Are you already discussing with them, or do they see the same approach, a mix of battery and fuel cell?
We actually are talking to German automakers because they're both looking for their own vision. They still don't clearly see which way this goes, and they'd like to be prepared just in case. And we have one project which looks into the question, how can we build up the infrastructure for hydrogen mobility? As you may know, we don't have any cars, but we also don't have any refueling stations. And in this project, there is a big German car maker involved, just because they like to know what the studies will show for a realistic pathway for the next few years so that they can adopt their strategies accordingly.
Do you see a need that the German automotive industry is kind of hurrying up a little bit because maybe the Japanese auto industry is already a step further, or how do you see the development?
Well, it is a possibility, yes, and that's the view that I have. But it's a possibility that the German car makers they can be perceived as quite reluctant, right, in this field. But I actually do not think it's true from what we hear and what we talk to them about. They're extremely interested in this technology. And I also don't think that the discussion in Germany is already settled for battery electric vehicles. But what you're going to find out when you work in this field is that people split into two groups. One supporting battery electric vehicles for pretty much everything, and the other group supporting only fuel cells. And this, from what I gather from the studies that we do, is probably not the way to go. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I've learned a lot. If you have further questions or want to discuss the topic later on, the booth from HiPause is the E55. Go have a look and have a chat. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
I appreciate that you're still with us, even though it's lunchtime. The next presentation will start in about 5 minutes regarding electrocatalysts, a key component for Power-to-X technology. The presentation will be held by Michael Miller, Dr. Christian Emanuel Müller, and I'm very much looking forward to this presentation. Please help yourself with some coffee, some refreshments, and see you in a few minutes. Thank you very much.